It's the basics and the foundations that are really important, as in any difficult times when the economy is, challenging. I would say independent dealers today need to think about stability, but also being agile. Being agile in the areas that they can think about where they can acquire their stock, think about options for funding that stock, particularly as the costs of stock have increased significantly over the last 3 years since COVID. And also, margin is really important in stock turn, so making sure that ultimately they get through their stock quickly and turn the stock quickly.
So I think besides the economic climate issues that we're all facing today, another challenge that our dealers are facing at the moment is the supply of stock and used car stock, and getting their hands on the right stock at the right time and getting it to their forecourt quick enough. I'd say that's probably one of the main challenges at the moment. I think another challenge that we can see sort of playing out at the moment is dealers having to try and stay relevant with their customer base. So, for example, the use of social media is on the rise, and I think that lots of our dealers are now starting to invest in people just to manage all of their social network. Things like TikTok and Instagram videos are really quite popular now to appeal to the right audiences.
Well, one of the myths about stock funding is the principle of the captives, i.e. if you take funding from NextGear Capital, there's some other requirement with that funding, and ultimately there's no other requirement other than using that funding to source used cars or used commercials. The other myths are around, thinking that stock funding is effectively what might be deemed to be a last resort. And it should be in very many respects, and very many of our dealers, it's a first resort. It's certainly a first resort when it comes to growing the business. We've funded many businesses from startups, and now we have multi-million pound funding lines for those businesses. So we've seen some great success stories. I would say to any car dealer, let me and let NextGear focus on funding your stock, and you can focus on using your capital to fund other areas of the business as required. So it's relatively simple. It's a simple business model. Another myth about stock funding is it's expensive, but it's all relative ultimately. And I think about stock funding as an opportunity to grow the bottom line and increase margins. And therefore, whilst it may be deemed to be expensive, ultimately the benefit is significant. Growth is different for different dealers. I mean, I wouldn't say it's as binary as growth is all about volume. Our funding plan allows different methodology when it comes to growing the business. So, for example, the stock profile is important to many dealers. So there may be more margin in high-value vehicles, for example, and our plan allows the dealers to fund high-value vehicles versus low-value vehicles. There are different ways to diversify, and our plan helps you do that.
So one of the biggest myths around stock funding is that it can be quite complicated and potentially a little bit scary. And that absolutely isn't the case. It is really, really simple. We provide funding for dealers to purchase vehicles. One of the other myths that we come across is that it's quite restrictive, when actually it isn't. We work with over 70 plus partners, so it actually makes it really easy to source stock from multiple avenues and add them to plans really quickly and easily. And again, the team are super experienced, they're really knowledgeable, and it's, our team are there to handhold right from the very beginning. And the customer service piece is really important to NextGear. It's what NextGear is all about, is providing the very best customer service and really being there with our dealers. And it is a partnership, so we do watch them grow over time. We've got a number of dealers that have been with us since the very beginning, who started off on the sort of a lower amount, let's say, and over the years we've worked with them to grow their line, and that's been really, really successful. So, they may have started off with sort of 10 cars on their pitch, and now they've got over 200, and we've got multiple cases of those.
If you're not turning your stock quickly, if you're not generating throughput, and you're paying all the expenses, as we've talked about earlier, so energy costs are increasing, resource costs generally are increasing, then you need this throughput of revenues to fund that cash flow that's required. I think the first thing around our stocking plan is it's there to utilise as and when. I think that's important. Therefore, if there's not a need today, it doesn't cost any money. So it's very much a plug-and-play model. So you have an available amount of funds for your stock. So that may be, for example, £500,000. But you only pay every time you fund a vehicle. So if at any given time you've only got £250,000 worth of vehicles on that plan, you're only paying for £250,000 worth of vehicles. If you've got the full plan utilised, i.e. 500,000, you're paying for 500,000. If you have no vehicles on the plan at any given time, then there are effectively no charges for stocking those vehicles.
One of the most common sort of stories we hear is that they use our plans to free up cash flow in order for them to invest in the business in other ways. So whether that be they want to have a bigger site, let's say, or some refurb on site, so they can get the vehicles out onto their forecourt a lot quicker, invest in people, invest in signage, all sorts of different things. That's why we do what we do.
I wouldn't say we should be used instead of, if I'm honest. It's, we are a supplement. We are another opportunity for car dealers to fund stock. If they have their own cash, they can utilise their own cash. But my suggestion would be always have enough headroom. So where, if you have the NextGear Capital funding in your toolkit, I think it's really helpful for your business to grow, helpful for your business to be stable. So I wouldn't say we are there to be instead of. I see NextGear Capital as being very much part of the toolkit and supplementary. From a funding perspective, we start around the £50,000 funding mark, and then we have multi-million-pound lines as well.
Our dealers can purchase from physical auctions, online platforms, so we're partnered up with over 70 plus auction partners and online platforms, but we also have what we call a trade source. So actually you can buy from anywhere and load a vehicle on from any source. It really is that flexible.
I would say the easiest thing to think about when it comes to NextGear Capital is, number one, we fund the whole purchase price of the vehicle. Number two, we fund the whole of the fees for the purchase of that vehicle. We fund for the delivery costs of that vehicle. And number four, we fund vehicles from various sources. So you're not tied into a specific source for that vehicle. We've got a partnership approach when it comes to funding. We've got feet on the ground. We've got people that can come along to your dealership and help your business grow. We've got a call centre for you to ring at any time if you've got any questions or queries. I think the key thing for me when it comes to experience is seeing the benefit of our stock funding to the independent dealers and seeing how we can help those businesses grow from relatively small, if you want to use the analogy of an acorn, into big oak trees ultimately. And we've got so many examples of very small businesses several years ago that are now big, successful businesses.